Holidays. Days usually marked by time off from secular work and school for commemoration of an event. Such as days may also be occasions for family or community festivities. Participants may view them as being religious or as being largely social or secular affairs. Is Christmas a celebration based on the Bible? Date of the celebration. McClintock and Strong Cyclopedia says, the observance of Christmas is not of divine appointment, nor is it of New Testament origin. The day of Christ's birth cannot be ascertained from the New Testament, or indeed from any other source. Luke chapter 2 verses 8 to 11 shows that shepherds were in the fields at night at the time of Jesus' birth. The book Daily Life in the Time of Jesus states, the flocks passed the winter under cover, and from this alone it may be seen that the traditional date for Christmas in the winter is unlikely to be right, since the Gospel says that the shepherds were in the fields. The Encyclopedia Americana informs us, the reason for establishing December the 25th as Christmas is somewhat obscure, but it is usually held that the day was chosen to correspond to pagan festivals that took place around the time of a winter solstice, when the days begin to lengthen, to celebrate the rebirth of the sun. The Roman Saturnalia, a festival dedicated to Saturn, the god of agriculture, and to the renewed power of the sun, also took place at this time, and some Christmas customs are thought to be rooted in this ancient pagan celebration. The New Catholic Encyclopedia acknowledges the date of Christ's birth is not known. The Gospels indicate neither the day nor the month. According to the hypothesis suggested by H. Usner, and accepted by most scholars today, the birth of Christ was assigned the date of the winter solstice, December the 25th in the Julian calendar, or January the 6th in the Egyptian. Because on this day, as the sun began its return to northern skies, the pagan devotees of Mithra celebrated the Dies Natalis Solstice Invicti, birthday of the invincible sun. On December the 25th, 274, Aurelian had proclaimed the sun god principal patron of the empire and dedicated a temple to him in the Campus Martius. Christmas originated at a time when the cult of the sun was particularly strong at Rome. Wise men, or magi, led by a star. Those magi were actually astrologers from the east. Although astrology is popular among many people today, the practice is strongly disapproved in the Bible. Would God have led to the newborn Jesus persons whose practices he condemned? Well, Matthew chapter 2 verses 1 to 16 shows that the star led the astrologers first to King Herod and then to Jesus, and that Herod then sought to have Jesus killed. No mention is made that anyone other than the astrologers saw the star. After they left, Jehovah's angel warned Joseph to flee to Egypt to safeguard the child. Was that star a sign from God, or was it from someone who was seeking to have God's son destroyed? Well, note that the Bible account does not say that they found the babe Jesus in a manger, as customarily depicted in Christmas art. When the astrologers arrived, Jesus and his parents were living in a house. As to Jesus' age at that time, remember that based on what Herod had learned from the astrologers, he decreed that all boys in the district of Bethlehem 2 years of age and under were to be destroyed. Gift giving as part of a celebration, stories about Santa Claus, Father Christmas, etc. The practice of Christmas gift giving is not based on what was done by the Magi. As shown above, they did not arrive at the time of Jesus' birth. Furthermore, they gave gifts not to one another but to the child Jesus, in accord with what was then customary when visiting notable persons. The Encyclopedia Americana states, during the Saturnalia, feasting prevailed and gifts were exchanged. In many instances, that represents the spirit of Christmas giving and exchanging of gifts. The spirit reflected in such gift-giving does not bring real happiness because it violates Christian principles such as those found at Matthew 6 and 2 Corinthians 9. Surely a Christian can give gifts to others as an expression of love at other times during the year. doing so as often as he wants to. Depending on where they live, children are told that gifts are brought by Santa Claus or St. Nicholas, Father Christmas. Per Noel Necht Ruprecht the Magi, the elf Jultematen or Julian Nissen, or a witch known as La Befana, the World Book Encyclopedia 1984. Of course, none of these stories are actually true. Does the telling of such stories build in children a respect for truth? And does such a practice honour Jesus Christ, who taught that God must be worshipped with truth, as described in John chapter 4, verses 23 and 24? Is there any objection to sharing in celebrations that may have unchristian roots, as long as it is not done for religious reasons? Well, Ephesians chapter 5 verses 10 and 11 read, "Keep on making sure of what is acceptable to the Lord, and quit sharing with them in the unfruitful works that belong to the darkness, but rather even be reproving them." 2 Corinthians chapter 6 14 to 18 says, "What fellowship do righteousness and lawlessness have? Or what sharing does light have with darkness? Further, what harmony is there between Christ and Belial? Or what portion does a faithful person have with an unbeliever? And what agreement does God's temple have with idols? Therefore get out from among them, and separate yourselves, says Jehovah, and quit touching the unclean thing. And I will take you in, and you will be sons and daughters to me, says Jehovah the Almighty." Genuine love for Jehovah and a strong desire to be pleasing to him will help a person to break free from unchristian practices that may have had emotional appeal. A person who really knows and loves Jehovah does not feel that by shunning practices that honour false gods or that promote falsehood, he is in any way deprived of happiness. Genuine love causes him to rejoice, not over unrighteousness, but with the truth. Notice that the Israelites adopted an Egyptian religious practice, but gave it a new name, a festival to Jehovah. But Jehovah severely punished them for this. Today we see only 20th century practices associated with holidays. Some may appear harmless, but Jehovah observed firsthand the pagan religious practices from which these originated. Should not his view be what matters to us? Suppose a crowd came to a gentleman's home, saying that they were to celebrate his birthday. He does not favour the celebration of birthdays. He does not like to see people overeat or get drunk or engage in loose conduct, but some of them do all those things, and they bring presents for everyone there, except him. On top of all that, they pick the birthday of one of a man's enemies as the date for the celebration. How would that man feel? Would you want to be a party to it? Well, this is exactly what is being done by Christmas celebrations. What is the origin of Easter and the customs associated with it? The Encyclopaedia Britannica comments that there is no indication of the observance of the Easter festival in the New Testament or in the writings of the Apostolic Fathers. The sanctity of special times was an idea absent from the minds of the first Christians. The Catholic Encyclopedia tells us, a great many pagan customs celebrating the return of spring gravitated to Easter. The egg is the emblem of the germinating life of early spring. The rabbit is a pagan symbol and has always been an emblem of fertility. In the book The Two Babylons by Alexandra Hislop, we read, "What means the term Easter itself? It is not a Christian name. It bears its Chaldean origin on its very forehead. Easter is nothing else than Astarte, one of the titles of Beltis, the Queen of Heaven, whose name, as found by Layard on the Assyrian monuments, is Ishtar. Such is the history of Easter. The popular observances that still attend the period of its celebration amply confirm the testimony of history as to its Babylonian character. The hot cross buns of Good Friday and the dyed eggs of Pasch on Easter Sunday figured in the Chaldean rites just as they do now. I New Year celebrations objectionable for Christians? According to a World Book Encyclopedia, the Romans dedicated this day, January the 1st, to Janus, the god of gates, doors and beginnings. The month of January was named after Janus, who had two faces, one looking forward and the other looking backward. Both the date and the customs associated with New Year celebrations vary from one country to another. In many places, revelry and drinking are part of the festivities. However, Romans 13:13 counsels, "As in the daytime, let us walk decently, not in revelries and drunken bouts, not in illicit intercourse and loose conduct, not in strife and jealousy." What underlies holidays in memory of the spirits of the dead? The 1910 edition of the Encyclopaedia Britannica says, "All Souls' Day, the day set apart in Roman Catholic Church for the commemoration of the faithful departed. The celebration is based on the doctrine that the souls of the faithful which at death have not been cleansed from venial sins, or have not atoned for past transgressions, cannot attain the beatific vision, and that they may be helped to do so by prayer and by the sacrifice of a Mass." Certain popular beliefs connected with All Souls' Day are of pagan origin and in immemorial antiquity. Thus the dead are believed by the peasantry of many Catholic countries to return to their former homes on All Souls' Night and partake of the food of the living. The Encyclopaedia Americana says, "Elements of the customs connected with Halloween can be traced to a Druid ceremony with pre-Christian times. The Celts had festivals for two major gods, a sun god and a god of the dead, called Samhain, whose festival was held on November the 1st, the beginning of the Celtic New Year. The festival of the dead was gradually incorporated into Christian ritual. The book The Worship of the Dead points to this origin. The mythologies of the ancient nations are interwoven with the events of the deluge. The force of this argument is illustrated by the fact of the observance of a great festival of the dead in commemoration of the event, not only by nations, more or less in communication with each other, but by others widely separated, both by the ocean and by the centuries of time. This festival, moreover, held by all on or about the very day on which, according to the Mosaic account, the deluge took place, viz., the 17th day of the second month, the month nearly corresponding with our November. Thus these celebrations actually began with an honouring of people whom God had destroyed because of their badness in Noah's day. Such holidays honour spirits of the dead as if they were alive in another realm, are contrary to the Bible's description of death as a state of complete unconsciousness. Ecclesiastes chapter 9 verse 5 and 10 says, "For the living are conscious that they will die, but as for the dead, they are conscious of nothing at all, neither do they any more have wages, because the remembrance of them has been forgotten." Verse 10, "All that your hands find to do, do with your very power, for there is no work, nor devising, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in Sheol, the place to which you are going." Regarding the origin of belief in the immortality of the human soul, please see the reasoning book produced by Jehovah's Witnesses. What is the origin of Valentine's Day? Well, the World Book Encyclopedia informs us that Valentine's Day comes on the feast of two different Christian martyrs named Valentine. But the customs connected with the day probably came from an ancient Roman festival called Lupercalia, which took place every February 15th. The festival honoured Juno, the Roman goddess of women and marriage, and Pan, the god of nature. What is the origin of a practice or setting aside a day to honour mothers? The Encyclopaedia Britannica says a festival derived from a custom of mother worship in ancient Greece. Formal mother worship with ceremonies to Cybele or Rhea, the great mother of the gods, were performed of the Ides of March throughout Asia Minor. What Bible principles explain the viewpoint of Christians towards ceremonies commemorating events in the nation's political history? Well, John 18 verse 36 tells us, Jesus answered the Roman governor, "My kingdom is no part of this world." John chapter 15 verse 19, "If you, Jesus' followers, were part of the world would be fond of what is its own. Now because you are no part of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, on this account the world hates you." 1 John chapter 5:19, "The whole world is lying in the power of the wicked one." Other local and national holidays. There are many. Not all can be discussed here, but the historical information provided above gives indications as to what to look for in connection with any holiday, and the Bible principles already discussed supply ample guidance for those whose foremost desire is to do what is pleasing to Jehovah God. If you would like a free home Bible study at a time and place to suit you, please navigate your browser to jw.org and follow the links online. Thank you for listening.